Thank you so much for joining us, Geeta. I guess the way that I wanted to start out is just to hear about who you are and kind of run through of your personal or professional life to this point. So take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alora. Great to meet you. And so, Geeta Pyne, by education, I'm a computer science engineer, and I have been working across the industries across the globe for about 30 years now. And basically, I'm from India. So, I was born and brought up in a city called Calcutta, which is eastern part of India. Grew up over there, from my childhood. I actually had a scholarship from Government of India, so that made me a ticket to a very good school. So I did a lot, schooling in the boarding school. Then I did my computer science engineering, started my job just like a fresh engineer. I had many choices, but I worked for India Space Research Organization, which is the most humbling part of my, like as a, 20-year old, being able to work on real hardcore, talking about AI and, data and dealing with, knowledge system expert systems. Little did I know what I was getting into, but that's where I started. So my journey has been like ever since, like pushing the envelope. I would say, like, I worked in India for the space journey for the first part. Then I came to US and across the various industries, between healthcare to electronic supply chain management to virtualization to cloud to data management to now I'm the chief architect at TIAA, which is our mission is to know how do you retire with dignity, how do you have enough for retirement, and you and I all know the age we are living in. There is a lot of challenges, right? So that's what I do. Born in Calcutta, now live in San Jose, California, but I travel for work pretty much between New York, Charlotte, India, and wherever it takes my work.
There's so many different paths we can go in this conversation. One of the first things that occurs to me is the fact that you are a woman in STEM, which is a huge initiative that's been happening around the world and in the US in making sure that there's space for women in STEM careers. I would love to hear a little bit more about your experiences in the India Space Agency. Talk to me about like the moment that you put this together as your first job and the path that you saw forward.
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit history of like why I chose the Indian Space Research Organization among other opportunities. I grew up with scholarship from Government of India from my like 6th grade to the 12th grade. Then I had another scholarship for my engineering, right? So when I was making my judgment around where should I open my first chapter, I had no idea about what, computer science engineering also meant I was the first engineer for my family, right? So one of the thing was I was introduced to advanced computing in our final year of computer science courses. And we talked about image processing and parallel computing just as an introduction. And that was increased my curiosity about, hey, that sounds extremely interesting. And it was not a core part of the curriculum, but we were as advanced computing. And then somebody talked to me about this ISRO is hiring for, and so I said, okay, it doesn't hurt to just appear for the interview, right? And believe it or not, it was such a gratifying experience going through that grueling process. When you are young, you don't, you have no kind of like, I was not afraid about anything, right? I'm still like bold and but courageous, but I had like about 15, 20 people, like scientists in the room that I just walked through what they were looking for. But that actually inspired me like, oh my God, there is all these people doing this research, things that are out there, right? I had other offers, but I chose this because I wanted to do something for space. I wanted to do work with all these brilliant people that interviewed me. And then thirdly, it was my little way of paying back to the country. I can never pay back what made me I am today, but if I at least work for a few years, I feel like I'm contributing and pay forward and paying back to the country, right? So that's why I went in. I would say my first assignment was radiometric and geometric correction for the NOAA satellite, which is the weather forecasting satellite, right? Just learning. I would say my experience really, if I summarize, that first principle thinking. Really go back to the basics, challenge every assumption, and if something seems too complex, you are not thinking right. So break down and break down and break down to getting into like bite-sized chunks, right? So that is something I learned over there, that really go back to the basics, and I still apply that every day. Secondly, I think it is always a team sport. We always say it is a we thing. No individual contributor, one person cannot do everything, right? I may crank up code like the most efficient way, But if I do not partner with others that actually understand to something to come real, so that working with a lot of physicists, working with a lot of electronic specialists, all the multidisciplinary people coming together to ultimately help make when the satellite is launched that it can image the earth and how you can interpret the data to forecast whether it is for remote sensing or for weather forecasting, right? I would say that was my second learning. And the third thing is knowledge makes you humble. The more you know, the more you know that how little you know, right?
Hmm.
So when you can surround yourself with the right set of people, you just feel like you are part of the ecosystem, but you just learn like how to become humble and how to make sure that that is something that you practice throughout, right? I did many things over there that I learned, but there is nothing like I tell people that you do a lot of software simulation. So I was a computer science engineer, so I'm not building the rocket, but I'm responsible for when the satellite images the earth, how do you interpret that data, right? There's a lot of things that could go wrong up in the air. So no matter how much good algorithm you write, how many simulations you do, when you are actually waiting live data to come from onboard tape recorder from the top and you want to run that, did my software work, that thrill and the passion is just, you can never override that with anything else I've done in my life.
What a wonderful way, literally a launch pad for the
Yes,
rest of your career. I want to follow up a little bit more. You were talking about first principles thinking and breaking things down into the most simple way possible. And I'm drawing a line between that and this podcast interview I saw with you. And you were talking about how you like to solve really hard problems, but you're lazy. I prefer to call it judicious with your time and energy and not lazy. But do you think that that first principles is a theme along with that so-called laziness in your work? And if so, talk me through like a story or a moment, an example of that in your work.
absolutely. I think anything in my life, even as a child, anything used to become like a repetitive task. I would find out a way of doing it once and leveraging multiple times, even not even knowing software, right? And that's why I think computer science was really good for me, that I could, first of all, instruct a computer to do the job I want. So it was fun, like somebody is listening to you. But then really writing in a very, very efficient way. I'll go back to space only, right? These days we have no constraint on the amount of CPU or the memory or the networking links. You can just almost like with a click of a button you can access like an infinite amount of resources. I might be exaggerating, but you know what I mean, right? So we had to be very, very mindful about how we write. And I actually, as a part of working in ISRO, I also worked on a first indigenous parallel computer from India, which was transputer, which was based on Inmos UK transputer, which is basically a computer on a chip. So we had constraint on how much you can put in the memory. It was like 4K. You have bidirectional links, so what you can transfer. If I would write the whole algorithm, like if you are looking at how the satellite, when the satellite is moving and imaging, so that's capturing tremendous amount of data. So when you want to process that, so you have to be mindful about how you want to break that into chunks and what is the property of that data, that you could write really efficient code, that you write it once, one set of instructions that you can apply to multiple data set, right? So I would say being lazy in the sense, like being very, to your point, about judicious about any resources, be it my memory of the computer or the instruction space that I'm loading into that chip, as well as the data set that it is working on. And the whole code should run in a way that is a very small footprint, because you cannot consume a lot of other things that where your data might be used, right? So this was configured. My first was in a single instruction, multiple data SIMD configuration. And I was going back and forth. Initially, I wrote a very inefficient way. The job was done, but I literally woke up in the middle of the sleep to figure out how do I write in a way that, like master worker configuration, the worker can get an identity, so that I can have one piece of code which can take the identity of the worker and identify what the data set could be and run, right? So very I'm a minimalistic by nature. And the way I figured out that I'm not thinking right is because there has to be a way and there has to be a better way. And fast forward now also, whenever anybody comes up, hey, right now, as we know, every company is having a lot of financial and budget challenges. And I'm like, constraint is a great thing. I get excited about constraint because this pushes back to leveraging all the levers you have, right? So going back and looking at, okay, you are doing a transformation, you are building this X. What needs to be true? What are the dependencies? That's why I do architecture, enterprise architecture, because you build reusable building blocks, right? So you build like a Lego block, each of these Lego pieces you can put in the shape you want, right? So every problem space, I try to always break it down and start how you will solve for it and build in a way that you are building actual usable capabilities. You build like a platform, like what needs to be common, but at the same time, you give flexibility to the people that they can uncover and the potential of the platform, right?
This is a great segue into talking about generative AI and how you, as an enterprise architect, I know that you were recently at Intuit, and they actually are one of our power customers at Writer. Intuit, from what I understand, had been investigating generative AI way before the huge ChatGPT mania began. So, if it's okay, if you could talk us through a little bit more about the generative AI projects that you focused on, and with a lens of that first principles thinking, I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so love that you brought up into it, right? Yes, I mean we talked about like November 2022. That was not the first time we heard about it, right? People have been doing it like for years. So that's why you might have seen that Intuit had actually embraced not only just Writer as one of the customer, but so many capabilities, right? And I think that thinking about the approach, I think what distinguished Intuit, I would say, is really you have to think holistically when you talk about Gen AI. Like it's not just okay, I get a little productivity here and there, that I have my copilot helping me to summarize or aggregate, which are low-hanging fruit items, but really thinking about from a customer, what are we doing for the customer? So putting that customer in that shoe, like with an Intuit is basically, your center for small businesses, right? For the consumer side and for the small businesses side, you can manage your end to end for your business, whatever you need. So putting that customer in the center, ensuring that how you identify so that make it painless for the customer, that if you came to the company to do something, once we know about you, we should be able to never enter data, that we can understand your intent, what you're trying to do, and then help you along the journey, right? So that's easier said than done, because you are doing this while you already have a lot of fragmented products, you have an existing architecture, so you cannot just sprinkle that, let's just throw AI or Gen AI on top of it, right? So the big thing was thinking about, again, how do you put the whole architectural approach? What should be your application architecture? Don't hide complexity, but make your complexity simpler, right? So meaning, what are the stacks you need to build so that when you are building an application, you have all the core elements that are available. So you might have heard Intuit Gen OS is the operating system kind of. So taking an OS approach, which is the first like a platform in the world, right? Today everybody uses the word platform like left and right. But to me, operating system is the best platform, until the internet and the cloud came in, right? But for generative, we're ideally thinking about, as we look for business use cases will change, but how do you start a platform approach and create that, right? And then the applications architecture building blocks, there are a zillion ways to do it, so that you do not do anything which might violate your security, privacy, ethics. So be responsible about, so cross functionally putting those policies together. But again, how do you make it easy for somebody adapt but not hide that? You still want somebody to know that your developers or people that are building, that you have to be still conscious about this, but make those is a pluggable APIs so that they can be interjected in and you can build your application, right? But to me, that composable thinking, going back to the first principle thinking, that you don't think that I'm building this whole, okay, whether TurboTax areas or QuickBooks, but think about in a composable ways how you're building those building blocks that can be put into the right place in the right context with the lot level of maturity. I think Intuit was able to do that and still continuing is just because of the laser focus on becoming a platform company, AI driven expert platform, right? And so we started a little with some of the lower, I mean, which you will know, like, for document and content and image generation, or even being productive with your copilot and code generation. But then real value really comes when you bring it to the customers, how you're leveraging your, whether you're doing in the cycle for tax or you're doing for your finance accounting, right? But I use generative AI, I would say, like, now I'm at TIAA. So this is a 100 plus years legacy company. So the scenario is different than other much younger companies, right? Plus, we are dealing with a much more higher regulated industry. So we are experimenting. The way we are doing is being pragmatic about it, where you can innovate with not just AI and Gen AI, but also be very mindful about so that you don't do anything silly stupid. So that mindset, or like blending that together. So the way we are doing right now, there are some, again, where you have customer call centers, right? You are already listening to a lot of calls. We should be able to aggregate, summarize, and help your customer servicing, right? Or you're searching, like when you are searching for a document, instead of just searching something, can we actually feed it and train it? Talking about being responsible, train it with our data so that you are not just going into wild web and making it like very, I would say, confidently saying something wrong. So putting a drag in place, putting your content in place and training it, right? But are we there yet? No. So what we're looking for 2024 is that AI first is our principle for TIA too. So we're looking at every possibility, right from employee productivity, because happy employees will keep you like produce great software. So what can we do? Then other areas, wherever you have operational excellence, things that we are doing, where we have been doing automation, but what are the opportunities to not just apply AI but use generative AI? And then thirdly is what are the products we are giving to customers. But it will be a multi-year journey, because we want to make sure we are, again, being very pragmatic but at the same time being responsible. But we are not saying that we are not going to do it, because it is very easy to say that, oh, this might have a risk of security exposure, so let's not do it. So we cannot do that, right? So you have to make that what needs to be true in order to still be secure, in order to still be responsible, in order to still be able to respect and are trustworthy, but then building that together. And in my role as the chief architect here, we have our data scientists and the AI architects and data architects, right? But putting that holistic look, where I come in, I'm not the smartest person at all. Many people smarter than me, but what I see is I see the white spaces. I can connect the things together. I can fill things like what we might not be thinking about. And lastly, putting that lens on, if you know overall as a business what you do, identify opportunities for how you can accelerate.
Wonderful. I love how you took me from Intuit to your work at TIAA. Let's take a little bit of a step back and talk about your role as an enterprise architect. If I say enterprise architect to the average person, they wouldn't be immediately like, of course, I know what Geeta does. More so with a CIO or a CTO, which I understand you're in those spaces a lot working with them. So, can you talk me through, in very plain language, what it is that an enterprise architect does?
I'm smiling because that's my mission in life, how we demystify enterprise
Yes.
architecture, right? So think about our role is really companies are business strategy, technology strategy. How do you make that strategy to real? How do you execute on that strategy? So an enterprise architect, think about like if I say a draw parallel, if you're familiar with Winchester Mystery House, like in San Jose, right?
I love this. Keep going.
The house was built without any architects, right? Because she wanted to just spend the money like, okay, as is, like whatever I want, I wanted. So where did we end up is we ended up with a lot of stairways leading to nowhere, right? So that's what the enterprise architect thinking about, making sure the strategy while talking about creating that north star and creating a path that you don't end up with the stairways going to nowhere, but you really have a path to get to that ultimate outcome you're looking. So enterprise architects can walk all the floors of the elevator kind, so they understand the business good enough, and then they're translating into what are the technology capabilities needed, what are the tooling and solution you need to build that, right? So they are the strategy to reality, kind of the substrate. They're kind of in a unicorn in a way. They should have enough technical depth and breadth to be able to say like I can understand how to do data, how to do infrastructure, how to do security. On the other side, they should be very articulate, like understand the business aspect of it, because it's at the end of the day, the what you want to do, like you want to be the AI driven expert platform or you want to be the perfect ordering platform, you have to bake that into what does that mean, what are the capabilities. So enterprise architects are truly strategy to execution. So how do they do that? If you think about what are the skills am I looking for? Number one, people I would say that are curious. Curious people can do critical thinking. We ask a lot of questions, get to that, what are you trying to do? Secondly, being able to, of course, influence without authority. Most of the time, these roles do not have a very army of people. You have teams, but you are also influencing entire organization. Enterprise architecture is architecting the enterprise, right? So being able to do that. Thirdly, is being able to have enough scars under your belt. So you do not become enterprise architect tomorrow, just I wake up and I just become an architect, right? But there are paths to get there. Diversity is a critical point because you need multiple viewpoints. So think about if I'm talking to a CEO, to a CFO, to a CTO, to an engineering leader, everybody is my stakeholder. So I cannot tell the same pitch, same story, right? So that able to articulate and connect to the stakeholders. So we need people that are very good. So if you're a business analyst, you can become a business architect, right? You can be a data person, you can become a data architect, right? And you need all these things to come together, but you should be able to see holistic. It's a beautiful discipline that being able to really architecting the organization, being the holistic view and the translator almost to business and technology.
Amazing. The Winchester house analogy is so cool. And actually, that makes me want to ask, as you're entering this era of generative AI, where do you anticipate the Winchester houses being in
Oh
enterprise companies?
my God. I mean, that's like a topic by itself. I love the, craze that is going on. I love that everybody knows that you have to be part of that. You have to try, you have to experiment. But I think what sometimes scares me is like, we say jump and we say how high without even thinking about why am I jumping, right? So I think what might happen is a lot of enterprises, if they are not pragmatic or conscious about and being like smart about what is the place for Gen AI versus what is it not, and also what does it do, how does it align to your future strategy, right? Strategy will change, you have to innovate embracing this, right? The business models will be disrupted, but we have to be ahead of the curve with the business value to think about technology is technology, right? And there will be new business models coming in because of the technology. But if we start saying, oh, I'm just going to do, all these capabilities that we used to do and now we plug in force fit Gen AI, what I get afraid about, data is still the center, like garbage in garbage out. We talk about hallucination, we talk about confidently saying wrong. So my positive optimistic side say this will force to get ultimately data quality and data governance become the first class citizen, people will care about it. But the other side is, can we keep up? Because the rate of change that you and I have seen in the last few months, right? It's like exponentially changed, right? To keep that innovation going while adapting your organization to the right thing, I think that's the delicate balance, and there is a lot of unknown. So my fear would be because of the unknown, because of this, because of the rat race, and you want to be part of that revolution. It's not evolution almost like it's revolution now, so we might trip over, right? But the thing, my goodness, would be if you have those chief architects and CTOs in the organization to keep your tabs and pulses on, right? Try it out, experiment, create the culture of experimentation, innovation. But how quickly can you bring it back to the mainstream so that before you go big bang, try it in a way, but they bring it back and understand you are measuring so that you can know when to course correct, right? Otherwise, yes, I can bet there will be organizations that will follow Winchester Mystery House just because everybody's just trying to go 1,000 miles an hour.
I'm hearing more and more people setting up centers of excellence for AI
Mhm.
in their enterprise organizations. Is there any kind of initiative like that happening at
Yeah,
TIAA?
absolutely, absolutely. And another beauty of this is, I think, forcing people to talk across the boundaries, because I think time has never been this good for bringing organization collaboration together, because risk, compliance, everybody is at the table with the technology and the data and AI conversations, right? So, yes, we have everything being vetted right from your risk posture to security, privacy to your technology, and everything goes through a very systematic way of evaluation before we think about like rolling out. So, yes, we have Center of Excellence. and cross thing happened at Intuit. We used to say like, hey, now we don't even have to ask people. If we don't all come together, we will be all, we will do something stupid, right? I mean, because not by intention, by just by not checking your left side and right side.
Yeah. And that also brings us, you mentioned about garbage in, garbage out when it comes to data. I've also heard you say that data is the central nervous system of an organization. Yes, that's absolutely still true. But if you're to take that analogy now, where does generative AI connect with the central nervous system?
I still think like what connects. So when we talk about also enterprise architecture, strategy, connection, if you break it down, right? What is the strategy? You have some objectives and outcomes that you're trying to get. How you describe that, what work is needed. So all this that you connect is basically through a knowledge graph, right? So pretty much all these are very many to many relationships that you're modeling and then describing. You will be applying AI on this, right? So ultimately you have data and metadata that are connected, and now you can apply AI in all senses, right? So to me it is still the center of everything you do, and then you do operations on it, and you can do different forms of automation and intelligence and insights we have been gathering for years to run the businesses. So now you have better ways of doing it, or faster way, or things that you could not have done before. You can actually understand, or back to the being judicious about it. If I have to create a lot of content and presentation or collateral, which is mostly like text document, like words and images and graphics together, right? I can leverage an AI for that. But at the end of the day, what am I feeding it? I'm still feeding in data. The data could be coming from a vector database, the data could be coming from a relational database. So that's why I think data is still the center. But what is it is forcing is also, is the yesterday's data technology going to be enough? No. That's why there is changes happening. If you think about all the data vendors, right, are looking at how they make it, putting this thing as a part of the core databases, if you are working with a database or anything, right, so that you can truly take advantage of it. So I think data and metadata are never going to go away. And intelligence is as good as your data, and the wiring, how you connect them together. And going back to the business objectives, because if it is not driving any business value, if it is not driving any customer value, it's just technology for technology's sake.
And when it comes to data and architecture, you've also said that they're the linchpin for creating a safer planet. Can you expand on that? Are these stories or lessons that you've learned along the way that helped you come to that conclusion?
Thinking about like what's the world we are living for tomorrow or the next generation, not even now, right? I would say when you talk about whether AI, Gen AI, like as much of advances in computing, you're churning a lot of energy, right? So when we are creating, like, whether there's huge amount of GPUs that are going in, so there's a lot of carbon footprint, there's a lot of computation, right? So I think if I now put the role of architecture here, our role is to make sure that you are using it in the most efficient way and not creating any waste. And how we'll be informed about that through the data and the signals that we can capture through all this computation, as an example that you're running. Like if I'm running an algorithm, if I can capture what am I burning with that. So that's why architects thinking about our resources, I mean, earth is, I mean, we all know the resources are finite, right? So how do you not create more waste while you are still evolving? So you will see a lot of architecture frameworks as a sustainability as a pillar in the architecture. So in the cloud frameworks like AWS, Google, Microsoft, well architected framework, like what does good look like? We try to declare that if you're building something, can you run through these checks to see how good or bad it is? Sustainability has been a pillar. So putting that as a part of your development cycle when you're architecting, designing, getting that data and the lens around how well am I delivering, and being able to have that feedback loop to go back and twist it, right? So data is what is giving you the signal. Architecture is helping you to process that in a way that you can make sense of it, and then use that data to drive basically what are the outcomes you want to drive for the world, right? So there are not in this company directly, but think about if you are a Procter and Gamble or somebody, when you are building this product. So with data you can now see basically every composition that you're building, and because we have the faster compute and the intelligence before you actually go into the whole manufacturing. You can analyze the ingredients, you can see what is the composition, and is it actually good for the earth or good for the environment or good for the people. So that's what I mean by the data and architecture is a mindset, putting this together, and that across the industries, be it a software industry that you are using a lot of GPUs to crank up your software, or you are in the manufacturing industry or a supply chain. If you get that visibility, then you can be conscious about making the recommendation right way. You see, architecture for good, architecture for sustainability, it is a movement pretty much. I'm part of Chief Architect Forum, Global Women in Architecture. We're trying to bring this whole world awareness around how architects can be part of this informing, right? We cannot make the decision, but I can help you to make the right decision by providing the right data underlying.
Wonderful. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you would like to bring to the table?
I think one of the thing I would say, like, many a time we get too comfortable. I would say get comfortable being uncomfortable. So there will be a lot of change. Be bold, talk to your neighbors left, right, and be part of this disruption because this is a one-time opportunity. No matter how scared we are, there may be job losses, but I think we are the ones that have to reinvent what is in it for the future. How do you leverage AI and or Gen AI and all the new stuff that will come to really create a better future and be the change you want to see? Really, don't just wait.
How are you using, like on a personal level, generative AI in your work?
I would say personal level, outside work, I mean, a lot of productivity, right? So if I have to read a lot of documents, so can I get a quick summary and aggregation? So that's the low hanging fruit. Or if I need to do a content presentation, can I take help of the Ollie and ChatGPT or even Microsoft Bing to create content, right? Those are some of the things in the personal life because it saves so much time. I was actually talking to another professor the other day. He was saying this is the time when a lot of students recommendation comes. It's like, I used to take to do for one, now I can do for at least 10 because I get a good enough starting point, right? So that's how I have been using in a lot of my work, is because goes back to my being lazy. I want to be productive. If there is a tool for that, I would. And yeah, writing summary, writing content, of course being mindful about that I'm not giving any confidential information, right? But sometimes just for fun, just for that, let's figure it out, what the heck, like try it out, right? But being mindful about what is the data I'm using to train that.
You talked about the low hanging fruit, but what are some like big, impactful use cases that you're starting to see at TIAA?
I wouldn't be able to share for confidentiality
Sure,
now, but hypothetically speaking, and this is just my opinion, this is not TIA or anybody, right?
sure.
I feel like there is so many things. There is a lot of legacy mainframe, like whether you talk about pension industry or lot of like old, right? Not the Silicon Valley new age startups, right? I feel like wouldn't it be nice? There are not many programmers or developers that understand their programming language, or this is a spaghetti code. I feel like there might be an opportunity to leverage to kind of decipher that and create. Even just the first step is understanding, so create my documentation so that I understand how things are connected. And then maybe more importantly, I think just refactor that, create a new way of how you should be thinking about dealing with content and document to create basically your next gen software, right? I feel like there is an opportunity. And again, just to be clear, this is not talking about TIA or any company.
Right.
This is just my mind goes that wouldn't it be nice to be able to just point them so that we can take all this code and the software and get a good enough way, even if it is a 50%, 60% starting point, to start how might we think about the next gen for those platforms, right?
Mm.
Because so far, yes, you get productivity, you do something, which is okay. We have been doing automation, but I think we need a real paradigm shift in some of those software and at an accelerated way. Because I think healthcare, I mean, if you look at healthcare everywhere, oh my God, that itself, like how many times we have been that we do not have a good way of exchanging information when you switch your employer and you get this, right?
Hmm.
Those are all content, right? The zillion, like, documents, the PDFs, the X-rays, and the, CT scans and so whatever, right? So if we could analyze those in a way, now that becomes a modern record keeping platform, modern healthcare record, and way of collaboration sharing. I think that to me will be a great opportunity for legacy.
Yeah, it'll be that transformational moment where you
Yeah.
take the learnings of the old and turn them into something really
Yeah.
innovative and new. That's amazing.
Yeah, and then create those in a way that could be industry specific. So you could have healthcare specific, you could have pension, like education, create those. But if somebody discovers that, don't keep it within you, share it across your industry, like across the
Hmm.
other companies in the industry, because then only it will get richer and better. And again, going back to mankind and safer planet, I think at the end of the day, it helps the human being and we can leapfrog and jump a lot in our evolution.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Geeta. Actually, I would love to hear your input. What do you think that core through line is, the story of Geeta that you think would be a great way of telling your story?
I don't honestly know, but what I do know is nothing is impossible to me. The art of possibility is how I look into life, right? I'm a natural,
Mm.
optimistic, positive person. And also, I'm a, like, get shit done. Like, don't just talk about it, but really make things. And at the end of the day, what is the impact you are going to make to the humans? How do you are you bringing your people, whether it is your direct team, indirect team, a part of this equation, right? Embracing inclusivity, bringing things together. That's why I think humans of AI kind of drew my attention. Make that a part of the story, right? So how do you do that and being you? And each of us, we all say we are all unique, which is 100% I believe in, right? So don't worry about, can I do it? Yes, you can. That's my philosophy. Yes, you can. And let's figure it out what needs to be true to make it happen. I'm a name changer, right? I have been across. Like I tell people, I walk in a company, I don't know the domain. What I do know is how to build good software and do it with people, how to build high performing team. That's who I am, right?
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you.